Static, whispers, the signals hidden between the lines of history. The stories you were told were complete, but pages were missing. Welcome to Redacted Frequencies. I'm your host, Cipher.
And I'm Echo. It is really good to be back behind the mic, Cipher, but there is a certain weight in the air today.
There is, because today we're not just looking at a conspiracy theory. We're looking at the assassination of a legend and asking if the legend itself is the conspiracy.
Okay, that's a heavy way to start. We're talking Abraham Lincoln, aren't we?
The 16th president, the man who saved the Union, the great emancipator. We all know the story, or we think we do.
Right. Ford's Theater, April 14th, 1865. The Civil War had just ended. Lee had surrendered just days before. There was this sense of relief, right? In the North, at least.
A huge sense of relief, but also incredible tension. Washington was a powder keg, and Lincoln decides to have a night out. He goes to see the play Our American Cousin.
And John Wilkes Booth, a famous actor, a staunch Confederate sympathizer, sneaks into the presidential box, a single shot from a Derringer pistol. It's one of the most infamous moments in American history.
Absolutely. Lincoln dies the next morning. Booth is on the run, cornered, and killed in a barn 12 days later. The nation is devastated. It elevates Lincoln to martyrdom. The end. That's the story.
It's a clean story. It has a clear villain with a clear motive. Booth hated Lincoln. He blamed him for the South's defeat. He and his co-conspirators were trying to throw the government into chaos.
Exactly. It makes perfect sense. It's tragic, but it's understandable within the context of the Civil War.
Okay, I know you well enough. You're about to tell me it's not that simple.
Is it ever? The story we're diving into today, it suggests that John Wilkes Booth was just an actor on a much larger stage. A patsy.
A patsy for who? This is where it gets murky, right?
Deeply murky, because this theory doesn't point to the Confederacy or some rogue Southern general. It points across the Atlantic to the heart of European finance. The claim, Echo, is that Abraham Lincoln was assassinated by order of the Rothschild family.
Whoa, okay. The Rothschilds, the legendary banking dynasty. That is a massive claim. How do you even begin to connect a disgruntled actor in Washington, D.C. to one of the most powerful families in the world?
The motive, according to this theory, is the single most powerful motivator in human history: money. And more specifically, the control of a nation's currency.
Go on.
All right, so let's set the stage. The Civil War is raging. It's unbelievably expensive. Lincoln and the Union need cash to fund the war machine. He approaches the established international bankers in Europe for loans.
The Rothschilds being chief among them.
The biggest name in the game. And according to the lore, they offered him loans, but at interest rates somewhere between 24 and 36%. Crippling rates. It would have shackled the United States to these financiers for generations.
It would have been a different kind of subjection. Economic, not political.
Exactly. And Lincoln refused. He was furious. Instead, he pushes Congress to pass the Legal Tender Act of 1862.
And that created the greenbacks, right?
That's it. U.S. notes, paper money printed directly by the Treasury Department, backed only by the full faith and credit of the United States government, not by gold, and not borrowed from a private central bank. It was essentially debt-free money.
And that would be a direct threat to a family whose entire empire is built on lending money to governments.
A catastrophic threat. Think about it. If the largest emerging power in the world proves it can finance itself without you, what happens to your business model? What happens to your power?
Other countries might get the same idea. It could all unravel.
Precisely. So in this version of events, Lincoln didn't just win the Civil War, he declared war on the international banking cartel. And they, allegedly, fired back by removing him from the board permanently.
So Booth is, what, a hired gun? How does he fit in?
The theories suggest he was manipulated, maybe through intermediaries, maybe through secret societies he was a part of. His own loud Confederate motivations made him the perfect cover. No one would look any deeper.
Okay, I have to stop you there, though, because we have to acknowledge there is zero, and I mean zero, credible historical evidence for any of this, right? Historians are unanimous. Booth acted out of his allegiance to the Confederacy.
You are 100% correct, and that's what makes it a conspiracy theory. The official sources, the ones cited by the Library of Congress, PolitiFact, all of them, they say this claim is baseless. It stems from 19th century propaganda.
Propaganda that was often, and this is a key point, deeply anti-Semitic. The Rothschilds are a Jewish family, and for centuries they've been the target of conspiracies that claim a secret Jewish cabal controls the world. This fits right into that ugly pattern.
It fits perfectly, and it's something we have to be incredibly careful to navigate. Our job here on Redacted Frequencies isn't to validate these theories, but to dissect them, to understand why they exist, what narrative they serve, and why they persist despite a total lack of evidence.
That's a critical distinction. We're looking at the anatomy of the story itself.
Yes. So, setting aside the historical record for a moment and just looking at the narrative the theorists present, they say the proof isn't in a memo that says, "Assassinate Lincoln." It's in what happened next.
Okay, so the aftermath?
The aftermath. They argue that almost immediately after Lincoln was dead, the move to get rid of the greenbacks began, that the banking interests swooped in, took control of the currency again, and put the U.S. back on a path that would eventually lead to the creation of the Federal Reserve.
So they see Lincoln's death not as an end, but as a hostile takeover.
A coup. The first of many battles in a war for financial control that they believe is still being fought today.
Wow, okay, it's a compelling story. I can see why it has legs. It's dramatic, it has a clear villain that's almost mythical in its power.
It reframes an American martyr. He's no longer just the man who freed the slaves and saved the Union. He's the man who stood up to the money power and paid the ultimate price for it.
And that's a story that resonates with a lot of people who are distrustful of financial institutions today.
It taps right into that vein of modern discontent. So as we go deeper, we have to keep two tracks in our head: the historical, evidence-based account, and this shadow history, this other frequency.
And see where they diverge, and more importantly, why they diverge.
Exactly. We're going to look at the people around Booth and the strange international connections that theorists claim are hiding in plain sight.
And this is where we have to draw a hard line. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and there is none. Zero. Attributing Lincoln's assassination to a Rothschild plot funneled through Confederate Secretary of State Judah P. Benjamin, as some theories claim, relies on dangerous and frankly disgusting anti-Semitic tropes. The source documents you mentioned highlight this. It's a textbook example of how prejudice can warp historical interpretation, creating a villain where one doesn't exist to fit a preconceived narrative.
And Echo is absolutely right to call that out. The factual takedown is undeniable, but it leaves the bigger question: why does a story with no proof and ugly roots still have such a powerful grip? I think it's because we crave simple answers for complex tragedies. We need a villain. The idea of a lone, hateful actor is chaotic and random, But a secret cabal, a powerful, shadowy hand pulling the strings, that's a story. It has structure. It's almost comforting in its own dark way. This isn't really about 1865 anymore. The Rothschilds in this story are a stand-in for modern anxieties about global finance, faceless corporations, and a world that feels increasingly out of individual control. It's a historical drama that lets people voice their contemporary fears.
And that's the core of what we do at Redacted Frequencies. Our goal isn't to validate or debunk any single claim, but to dissect the anatomy of these narratives. We explore why they're crafted, how they persist, and what their enduring appeal reveals about our collective fears and societal biases. So, to be clear, our purpose today wasn't to prove this conspiracy, but to dissect its anatomy. We wanted to understand why stories like these are so compelling, how they often reflect deep-seated societal anxieties, and why it's so crucial to critically evaluate historical narratives, especially when they are tinged with prejudice.
Because sometimes the most dangerous static isn't in the signal, but in the stories we tell ourselves. Until next time, keep questioning the silence. In our next transmission, we'll be tuning into The Curse of Mountain Dew New Flavors. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. And if you're listening on YouTube, a like helps the signal break through.